bit of sugar. I don't think we put salt until after, but and then we seal up the bag, get a vacuum. Otherwise, it's going to float on top. You need that vacuum so it'll stay in the water bath and not have like part out, part in. And you can cook it. And what's really cool about sous vide is like you can't really overcook it if you're holding the right temperature. So that's a little bit not true because you cook it for days and days and days. You might actually overcook it at some point, but there's these magic numbers in sous vide cooking. Like a vegetable has pectin in it. So like carrots and parsnip, if you don't reach a certain temperature, that pectin is still active, and you get like a real crunchy vegetable. But if you hit 183 degrees and hold it for over an hour, you break down the pectin, and you get this like nice, kind of rubbery vegetable. It's a more desirable texture. Shouldn't use the word rubbery, but not as crunchy and not like limpy. and you can get it to really marinate that whole time with whatever ingredients you're adding to the bag. You could have little onions and things, and you don't have to be there. You just set the water bath, throw the vegetables in, walk off. And we actually do the eggs like you did, Gabe, and we've done a couple of meats. But lately we've been using it for dog food. It's our new favorite. It's kind of nice too because nothing really interacts. I mean, the food it's human grade meat that we buy from the butcher, and it's like cow's neck and things that people wouldn't want to really eat. And we just put that in a vacuum and throw that in the water bath. And it doesn't really interact with any of our food that we put in because everything's in a hermetically sealed bag in a water bath. So we've been cooking our dog food with it. She loves it.
Well, what's nice too for dog food, at 150 degrees for 2 hours, we've killed all the bacteria, but when you open the bag, it still looks bloody, fresh, like it doesn't look cooked at all. So she's still getting this like dog experience, but we have the ease of mind of knowing that there's no bacteria. So it works for us.
Something like a roast. What temperatures would you use for that? You call it?
Well, temperature and time matter. So I'll ask Gabe in a second too what you were using, but we were doing for multiple day cooking. Like if we want to do like. Let me back up a step. So with meats, there's usually collagen in the meat. And collagen is behaving a lot like the pectin was in the vegetables. So if you want to buy a low cut of meat and make it taste like a fillet...
to make sure the collagen all breaks down. It breaks down at, I believe, it's 120, 125?
Right. It's in that 120 range, but generally you want to cook just a few degrees warmer.
Yeah.
There's sort of a safe zone for sous vide cooking where to kill off all known bacteria types is 132 or higher. Right. So generally we would cook our meats for about 3 days at 132 degrees. And, I just set it to 132 and walk away, and it'll sit there at that temperature. And what's kind of cool is even at 3 days, you cut the meat at the end and look in the center, and it's like red in the center still and just kind of cooked on the outside. And, you've safely removed the pathogens that would have been there. What temperatures were you using for your short ribs?
Short ribs is about 135 or so, like overnight. For steaks, I usually do it like 140, 145 for a few hours.
Right, and that's generally what we're doing for a dog. We actually do about 150 for a few hours for the dog's steaks, and we've done some steaks too.
Someone brought us elk just to test it. We actually blew the elk because we cooked it right in the sous vide. It would have been perfect, but then we got cocky and tried to blacken it in a pot pan. And
no, I smoked it.
That's it. You smoked it.
I couldn't resist.
Right.
I smoked it for 10 minutes, but it's enough to really dry it out, and it was already a tough meat. But for game meats like that, wild elk, this was a male big elk that was, really muscly, and you want to break down that collagen, or it's going to be a rough meal.
Yeah, the trick with that would be to cold smoke it first.
Yeah, okay, I should have.
Yeah, smoke first.
Ask that man about barbecue.
How cold is cold smoking? Is it like 120 or less is considered cold smoking?
Yeah, you really want it to be under 110, preferably. Okay. But while it's still cold, just throw it in there. You can cold smoke for 10-15 minutes, and it's
another application.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that would work fine with our smoker. That we have a stovetop smoker that we could also do. We could start messing with the temperature control on that, because the deal is the temperature. This food grade probe is cool. It's up to about 350 degrees. It's fine, but then you start melting the probe, and I think a lot of barbecue people have this problem: is they keep cooking out their probes by getting a little too hot, and you got to go buy another one. So One word of safety around sous vide cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of restaurants are getting shut down now because it was like a big thing in New York and San Francisco and stuff for doing sous vide cooking now since in the last few years. And there's a real botulism danger because you got a vacuum. And botulism, if it's not an acidic environment, it can really breed very quickly in there. And so you can open your meal and kill everybody, or get really sick. And the danger temperature zone is 80 to 130 degrees, roughly, is like kind of that danger zone where bacteria, it's warm enough to live and it can breed quickly. So generally, if you take a meat out of the freezer and kind of let it sit on the counter all day, you're approaching that zone. So it's not going to get fully cooked, and it's going to be in a bag and vacuum. Like, you can just keep breeding and breeding. So you just need to be mindful of that danger zone. You don't want meats to ever sit around between 80 and 130 degrees.
So would you say as a duration of cooking it sous vide style, just over 130, that puts you in the comfort zone?
Yeah, you'll kill off most bacteria just over 118, but there are a couple, and there's one real outlier at 132. So just to get rid of everything, you got to cook at 132 or higher, and it's got to be at least an hour, I believe, to be safe.
And there's some other things that can prevent botulism as well. Like,
acidic.
Yeah, if you're using an acidic marinade, that usually it keeps it pretty safe. If you're curing meats, that's the whole reason that people use nitrates in meats, because nitrates kill botulism really, really effectively. And you don't have to use a lot. You can use a small amount, but still not going to be, safe. It'll be safe and non-carcinogenic. You have to know your nitrates, because there's different kinds. But.
Okay. And so, also point out, this is the crock pot method I'm using, where I fill it with water and throw in my bag of food. And usually I just set the crock pot to low, and the temperature controller do the rest. But the more professional setups is they were using these large plastic, like Lexon containers, and they would put lab equipment off the side of this container that had a huge heating element. They'd have a stirring mechanism and to move the water. And those devices were open lid, so the heat would be lost very quickly. And that was really desirable because they would have the controller constantly kicking on, heating up again, so they could hold real precise temperatures, even down to 0.1 degree. Celsius, so they were doing pretty high precision cooking, and this is total like amateur hour version, but it's also like way more economical and not that different. I'm holding about 2 to 3 degrees.
It's not bad.
On that.
You done anything with immersion heaters or anything else like that?
I haven't put an immersion heater in here. I know the last issue of Make's got a great little immersion heater sous vide setup that they did, and I think they say it only cost it was pretty inexpensive, but there was a lot of work behind that setup.
I quite a while back picked up, to keep your coffee, or make, the ultra cheap, make a hot cup of coffee, immersion clippy thing that I think nobody would list these days, but they're still solid. That's amazing.
How much do you really need? Couldn't you take an old coffee pot?
Yeah.
Take the element out of the
You
bottom?
certainly could. The immersion heaters are really nice because they're just you just drop them, clip them on the edge of the cup, and they have a coil in there that just heats direct upwards. And I know from some especially online blogs and things like that, they're real preferable if you want to just make a small amount of hot water. It's one of the most efficient ways you can use your 12 volts or 120 volts, whatever style it is, because you're dumping all of your heat into what you're wanting to make hot. And so that's just kind of curious.
Yeah, you could roll your pretty nice system of immersion heaters and an aquarium tank, water pump.
Water pump, yeah.
What would the sous vide cooking things going for?
Well, the highest end that people have been using for years was about $1,400 for the Cole Parmer lab equipment immersion heater, and then it quickly dropped down to about, I think, a $500 consumer grade version. And there's even now, I think, a $300 sous vide that's sort of consumer grade. But still, the $17 crock pot is pretty hard to compete with. It's just ready to go, like add water,
Yeah, I haven't seen the sous vide at Walmart yet. So
it's not going to be so different than this.
Next year it'll be at Walmart.
Yeah, and I really like this crock pot too. It's all analog, right? Because if it had any digital controls on it, it would probably start blocking you and not really allow you to control the temperature through here. So,
quick question before you go on: did you reprogram to get rid of the 3-minute delay?
No, in general, I just leave them.
That's why you're getting a lot of cycling.
Yeah, well, I don't get too much cycling. It's pretty slow, because these are real slow to heat up and down. And if you leave the lid off, you You can affect it a lot by having the lids partly open off or all the way on.
What do you figure your